Hello again, it's Sean here on Realpolitik, and this is my second video, and today we're going to talk about Reform UK and the current American administration, and we'll talk about, are they fascists or are they not? Are they leaning towards fascism? So just before that, thanks to everybody who watched my videos that I uploaded yesterday, which is my first videos on the channel. I really appreciate you engaging and listening. You'll be happy to know this one is not going to be as long, but I just wanted to kind of discuss a bit of the layout of the current political status in the UK, and I think that there was a lot going on, so thanks for sticking with me. And if you're watching this video when I'm out for another out of breath walk, I've kind of staggered it a little bit, so I'm mostly doing downhill when I'm talking, so hopefully I won't be huffing and puffing as much. But anyway, so Reformed UK, are they leaning towards fascism? Now, I don't think they are, okay? And I think that Reform UK are super nationalist, populist to the point of having next to no real policy, apart from immigration. But, you know, we talked about this, like, you know, but I think I spoke yesterday more about the Tories not having, and Badenoch not having policies, but Reform are similar, but I think a lot of their true goals are hidden in you know, tax cuts for the extremely wealthy. I think, well, you could probably put that at the door of a lot of right-wing parties around the UK, but as I said, I think Reform use a lot of their ultra-nationalist, well, really, and it's not British nationalism, okay, if there is such a thing. I think that it's really rooted in English nationalism, and I'll tell you why. So Farage himself, this is, you could find this online, go and have a look. Directly after the Scottish independence referendum, Farage is interviewed several times where he said, "We've had enough of the Scottish tail wagging the English dog." So that was a real boost to the morale of those Scots that felt they felt valued in the Union, and that they wanted to keep their, you know, keep it going with the rest of the UK. It really shows where the right feel about, you know, Scots who feel that Scotland's place is in the Union. So, and I think that at the end of the day, Brexit was an English nationalist agenda. And who have we got to thank for Brexit the most? You know, Nigel Farage is the biggest protagonist of Brexit. It's unleashed English nationalism. This is very self-evident. Like, I think the thumbnail that I used yesterday, there's a bunch of flags, and that's been a thing everywhere in the UK recently. Union Jacks, English flags, Saltires, Welsh Dragons. You know, these are bringing out, and I won't go into that. I'll maybe talk about the flags a different part, but what it symbolises is, like, they're using nationalism to show that this is our country and you don't belong, effectively. I think that so English nationalism has really been unleashed after Brexit. Reform do a lot to talk about, to stoke up English nationalism. They really go after anybody. You know, I don't know what he might have done, but I don't know if the Reform leadership said anything about the likes of Gary Neville, you know, the Man United footballer who came out and was talking about the flags thing. But a lot of the online right has went after Gary Neville in a big way, and, you know, talked him down as a traitor and stuff, which is just absolutely crazy. You know, Gary Neville, as he said himself, he's representing his country on numerous levels, you know, multiple times. You know, I'm Scottish, I have an English wife, I travel to England quite a lot. My grandparents were Irish, so you know, but it's interesting to see a real English patriot that stands up for you know, good values in his country, and Gary Neville. So go and check out the Gary Neville video, see what you think about the abuse thrown at him. Now, is that the fault of you know, Reform UK? Maybe went down a tangent a bit. Possibly not, but I think that they are creating this sphere where it is good to attack these people that they see as talking down their country in a vitriolic fashion. So I think that they're very English nationalist. I think they're populist to the point of having next to no policies. I don't think they're quite fascist. I don't think that sort of militarism, and they've not really talked about, apart from the ECHR stuff, I've not seen real kind of talk about state repression and things like that. They obviously don't have good language towards asylum seekers, but there we go. I think, now, the American administration, the current American administration, I think the language is self-evident. I think from the leadership there, you know, Donald Trump himself has used a lot of language describing Latin American illegal immigrants in terrible ways that I'm not going to mention here, because I would imagine that probably gets me into trouble. As you know, I'm new at this, but I'm not going to incite the wrath of the lords of YouTube. But he's the kind of bad hombres speech and various other things that Trump has said about basically America's neighbours, the people who inhabit the neighbouring countries of the United States, I think is evident of hyper-nationalism, which is one of the tenets of fascism. But I think he really truly believes that, and him and his sphere around him believe that Americans are ascendant above the other nations in their sphere, and across the world, really. Political repression, yes, I think that you're beginning to see massive persecution of people who are just doing their jobs. I think that the ludicrous charges against the former FBI director, in response to him being asked to investigate things at the time. The government have kicked out prosecutors who said there's no evidence and put in their own people who are grossly inexperienced for such roles, but they're loyalist and they're doing it. So I think that the sort of weaponization of litigation is pretty self-evident, as is the extreme prejudice that they're showing to even people with right to remain in the United States. Some US citizens have been grabbed by their ICE departments and ended up in all sorts of places, really, but I think namely El Salvador, the sort of the bottomless pit prison that you don't seem to have any sort of escape from effectively. Legally there seems very little, and the president of that place is someone who's in Trump's pocket. So the sort of hyper-nationalism, the cracking down on political opponents, basically going after anybody with perceived insult. I think, is that more to do with a fragility of ego of the leadership, rather than super nationalism or even tendency towards fascism? But I think that one of the amusing things about this, so we kind of have it on a bit of light-hearted note here. Do I think Donald Trump is a fascist? No, I don't actually, but I think that he might not be intelligent enough to be a fascist, and that might be his sort of his elimination process. I think if we go back to when he used to use "Born in the USA" as an entry to his rallies and things like that, and Bruce Springsteen was basically said that Trump's too daft he's too much of a dafty, to use a Glaswegian word, but he's too much of a dafty to know that song was a kind of sad thing about patriotism in the States. Yes, the sort of the kind of the people it describes in the song are proud to be American, but they get kicked in the teeth by their own country. It's a shocking sort of review of the state of the country during the Vietnam War. And I think, there's other critics of the current US leader might say things about the Vietnam War, which I'm not going to go there, but you can maybe check that out. Look, do I think that... So that might be my thing. I'm not sure that Donald Trump is clever enough to be a fascist. I think the people round about him have some scary, deranged views. I think that was evident when the Vice President, Vance, he went to the Munich Security Conference, and instead of everybody talking about the war in Ukraine or even the war in Gaza, he spoke about how that the Western European countries were crushing people's rights, and he mentioned even Scotland here, talking about that it was becoming illegal to pray near near centres that would offer abortion to females, which is just ludicrous. I think that they are searching for enemies everywhere. I think that there is, it's not just that. You could see Vance, Stephen Miller, previously people like Bannon. I think that there is certainly a worrying slide. Now, would I class them as fascist? I don't think so, but I think that the militant, the militant sort of stuff going on around American cities, where he's marching troops, federal troops, into cities that are seen as in opposition to him, that the political sort of class in those cities and states are... now, I'm not an American, obviously, but recently, did we not have I believe that the federal government sent Texan National Guard into Chicago, into Illinois. Seems like they just have that much distrust that they wouldn't even federalise the Illinois National Guard. So American viewers could maybe educate me on why that happened, but that seemed particularly bizarre. So, as an objective outsider's view, that seemed to us that Trump used what he would see as his very loyalist kind of Texan federal troops to effectively invade another US state. So I think that's where it is. Do I think that Reform UK are fascist? No, they are hyper nationalist and they're populist, but I think they lack some of the other classifications of it. I think that the American administration are really, really skating on the ice. I think it's a scary time to be the kind of people that the American administration don't approve of if you're certain minorities and sort of LGBTQ people, even neighbouring countries, obviously threaten Canada, Greenland, Panama, anywhere else really that they take their fancy. This destroying of any kind of Venezuelan on a boat in the Caribbean. I think that there is real concern about what's going on over there. So hopefully that's something that you might have something to say about. So thanks for joining me. Hopefully I wasn't out as puff this time, since I was mostly walking downhill. And take it easy. See you later.